Good evening, Facebook. Welcome back to Becoming Carmen. I am back with an awesome new stranger that I just met. Her name is Madeline Middlebrooks. She is an attorney at law. I think I'm saying that right. She's going to tell us in a brief moment what type of attorney she is and the awesome work that she is doing in the area of environmental justice. Always like to bring strangers on with me to just talk about community work, what they're doing, and their why. I believe in the intersection is where we can make real critical changes in the movement to foster equity, racial reconciliation, and community healing in a new way. So, Madeline, please tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and why you are here with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Karen, for having me today. So, hi, everyone. My name is Madeline Middlebrooks, and I'm a staff attorney at Great Rivers Environmental Law Center. And most of my work focuses on working on environmental racism issues, the communities of color experience across the city of St. Louis and more broader and also in Missouri. And so I just started in September and I'm happy to be coming home. I'm originally from the St. Louis area. I did my law school out in Colorado, but I'm happy to start my legal career in St. Louis working on an issue that I really care about and think it's a really important public health issue.
Tell me a little bit more about environmental justice. I know we met briefly. When I say briefly, I think we talked for 30 minutes. And then I say, hey, let's just do a live and tell the world. So I don't know what environmental justice is, not completely. I hear the word pushed a lot, and it's usually connected to specific agendas. I know that some of your work is centering around lead in St. Louis public schools. So can you speak to what environmental justice is and the work that you're doing in St. Louis public schools?
Yeah, of course. And like you said, Carmen, environmental justice, that term has become really, really popular in the last 2 years, if not 5 years. And it really did start back in the civil rights movement. And it's just a movement of folks and people who have decided that they're going to stand up as a community and ask more of what their environment looks like in their communities. So, really, what it boils down to is environmental justice and environmental racism is really what's going on is when communities of color often experience a burden of environmental hazards such as pollution, air pollution, or the oversighting of landfills in their communities. Or I was telling Carmen before this, when you drive down the 70 corridor closer to the city, you start seeing more polluting facilities, industry, very concentrated, and less, also not that many parks, right? And so it's a very systematic approach of communities of color, often Black communities, experiencing these hazards at a higher rate and shouldering these burdens versus other white, more affluent communities. And St. Louis is a sadly an example of what's going on in our community.
Wow. So I'm gonna double back to the lead and SLPS. Do you have any thoughts with your research on why those things are done strategically in Black and Brown communities or communities of color? Because even just thinking about everything that you have said in our last conversation, we don't see that in more affluent Caucasian communities. We don't. So why is it only in urban Black communities?
Yeah, so I mean, depending on what type of pollution or what kind of injustice is occurring, there might be different reasons, but it basically comes down to these are the communities where they can put a polluting facility in them or oversight them there, and there's not much ruckus from the community. So, say a sewage plant or a landfill wants to start up shop in the middle of an affluent neighborhood. What are we going to have? People calling their elected officials, people calling their personal attorneys, people, oh, I have a connection with so and so in the government office. And so we're not going to let this happen in our community. And so some of these entities are part of a modern day society, right? So they have to sometimes go somewhere. And they usually go in places where not much community, what would be called, not much community conflict, right? So if
Or
we
where
put
people don't fight?
Yeah, or people don't bike because they don't know what's going on, or they have so many other things going on. Sometimes it's placed in the older parts of cities. So just with the way poverty and redlining has occurred, sometimes people get pushed into certain places where there's more industry, because those are usually cheaper property values around heavy industry, landfills, polluting facilities. That's where sometimes people can only afford to live. Um, in terms of lead, like you were saying, my work mostly focuses on lead contamination in general, and then specifically lead contamination in schools. And so the school district in the city of St. Louis is St. Louis Public Schools. And the reason why Black children are 2.4 times more likely to have lead in their system than white children in St. Louis is because usually we are living in older housing stocks. So any house built before 1978 probably has lead-based paint. And that is the leading cause of lead poisoning in children. And while there are other homes in the St. Louis area that were built after 1978, the upkeep and repairs are probably happening more rapidly in those more affluent areas so they can remediate the lead. And so that's why children are being exposed that way. In terms of schools, what's going on is in older buildings where there's not that much, maybe not more funding for upkeep or repairs, lead could be entering drinking fountains from outdated drinking fountains, older lead service lines, or just things you find in older buildings built before 1978. So with us being in an older city and also having older schools, we are more susceptible to have lead in school drinking fountains in our area.
Wow, like I'm thinking about everything that you're saying. Like, I need Maddie to help me because we just got incubated in our community with a small grant to start our pod. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, I know your focus is St. Louis Public, but I need your help to really think about how we're going to bring this community pod to fruition, especially thinking about all the projects we're about to be doing, because we're getting ready to go into homes and start doing painting and all of that. Do we need to chip paint before we put paint? Like all of this stuff. But I've never heard environmental justice taught this way. It's usually strategically one agenda, one mission, one thing. But it's almost like you're saying this is the work of a community organizer. And if supported correctly, we can really change the game in marginalized communities. So that's just a side thought. But back to St. Louis Public Schools. What, and I don't know if I'm asking this right, the data. What is the current data? What's going on in St. Louis Public Schools with the LEAD? What do you know from your research?
Of course, and this is all according to public record that the district provided me and also posted on their website. And so back in 2016, in response to the Flint, Michigan crisis with lead in Flint's water, St. Louis Public Schools voluntarily tested their water. And I say voluntarily because there is no current federal mandate or Missouri state law that requires most schools to test their water. So the Environmental Protection Agency estimates that 90,000 schools roughly don't test or let in their water. And if you don't test, you will not know because it's odorless, clear substance. So you really have to test to know what's going on. So in 2016, they tested their fountains and set a action level of 10 parts per billion. So they wanted to fix their fixtures in their school to test below 10 parts per billion. And they set this internal action level. Different places set different action levels, but it's always important to realize that there's no safe level of lead exposure. Lead is an extremely toxic neurotoxin that affects multiple organs in the body system from your brain to your development, and particularly affects children. So that's why I focus on schools, because children spend a lot of time at schools, and they have the most ramifications if they are exposed to lead. And so like I said, they tested their water and found elevated lead levels throughout the district. Some schools didn't have lead, some schools did, testing over that 10 parts per billion action level. So they set out a plan, which is on their website, called the Water Action Plan. And in 3 years, they were going to test all the fixtures again. So based off public record on first draw samples, so before they just turn on the taps and test the fountains. In 2019, there were still tests from first draw samples, according to public record, that tested higher than 10 parts per billion. After they did some remediation, sometimes they said, according to board meeting minutes, they would flush it, they would just turn on the fountain and then retest, the levels would drop. However, the Environmental Protection Agency's guidance document says that flushing is not a long-term solution to this problem. And even data up until 2020 shows elevated levels of lead on first draw samples higher than 10 parts per billion. So it's a very tricky situation because they're not required to do anything. So it's great. I always say it's great that they tested. It's, in my opinion, other advocates' opinions around the country, that after we test, we also should have an effective remediation strategy to reduce children's exposure to lead.
I know I don't know if you're a mom or not, but like I'm a mom and I'm in the city. We just had an election. So I wonder how our board of elections, the school board, how they factor into writing or crafting legislation to encourage the school districts to take that next step, because it almost seems like there's a ball drop and no one picked it back up. So how do we hold people accountable to that? You have any thoughts about that? Like, what should people be doing, people with power?
Yeah. Well, it first starts with us, right? And communities organizing ourselves to say we care about this issue. School districts in, in Illinois, school districts in Seattle, they have adopted these policies. They also were not required federally to adopt these policies, but look what they did there. What can we do here? So first, we need to organize ourselves, community organizers, attorneys, organize ourselves, see what do we actually want to come of this, right? And then once that happens, then we can work with school boards, we can work with elected officials to see what can be done. At the state level, some states have passed state laws that require remediation. So do we have enough organizing power to affect things going on in Jefferson City, right? Do we have enough power to sit down with school boards across the region, the St. Louis area, to ask for more, to ask them to adopt stricter policies? But it first starts with us. Other places have done this, so we are not creating the wheel. So I always like to say that to people, like, this is possible, but we need people who are passionate about this, interested about it, and just really wanting to help children not be exposed to lead, and willing to really organize around it and help out.
So when I hear you say that, it's kind of like, Carmen, you putting the cart before the horse just a little bit. Let's organize first. So I'm thinking about, my community pod in the 63115. I'm thinking about the awesome organization Evolve and Tasha that connected me to you, who is boots on the ground, environmental justice, you connecting with her. I'm thinking about Jackie Gold and Centering the Caregiver and the project that's coming to Ashland Elementary, and Krista in Southside. I'm thinking about We Power, who crosses over the whole metropolitan area and East St. Louis, to you needing to connect with them. I'm thinking about you needing to be in the PACA group. I'm thinking about Bridge to Hope St. Louis and their parent power base, you needing to connect with them. But as I throw all of these names out there, it's for naught if we don't come together and say we want remediation, and then center what's important, and then also giving space for parents like me who have no clue of what this is, no clue of really why it's important, and then educating on us on why it's important. So that's what I hear you're saying as a first step. You need access to these people so you can begin to have a fruitful conversation and be able to bridge the gap with St. Louis Public Schools and these organizations to save our children and ensure they're healthy.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't want to do anything without people who are affected by this issue, who care about this issue, because it's not authentic. And then if it's not authentic, it's not sustainable. And a lot of environmental justice battles are won through community organizing, community empowerment. And so to be successful, we need a great foundation of folks and community members and organizations who are ready to work on this issue and, like you said, really ensure that children are safe or drinking clean water. Because if they're not, it really does affect them long term potentially. It can really affect their IQ attainment. It can really make them more irritable. It can make them delay their development, right? And these are all well-known documented things. I am not a doctor. This is just what the Environmental Protection Agency put out. This is what the CDC has put out about lead and how there is no safe level of lead exposure, especially in children. And so it's, if kids should be able to drink clean water at school. Kids should be able to feel safe and know what they're ingesting is not going to potentially hurt them down the line. And so that's just all I would hope that people
You know
get
what I
organized.
thought, Maddie, as you were saying that, everybody talks about the importance, especially of our Black and brown children, being able to read by the time they're in third grade. And I'm sitting here thinking about what you're saying. I'm like, depending on how much lead is in them, that might be affecting their ability to read. So if we can connect both and, again, we can change the game. So I really feel like this work that you're doing or that you're bringing is imperative to be included in every conversation. How can people reach out to you? What is your contact information, telephone number, email address? What do they need to do to reach out to Madeline Middlebrooks?
Of course, and please reach out. You can call my firm that I'm working at 314-231-4181. You can email me at Madeline, Madeline, at greatriverslaw.org. Or you can just go on, this might be the easiest way, just go on to Great Rivers Environmental Law Center's website and click Contact Madeline Middlebrooks. That might be, so we don't have to remember links. And if you just type in Great Rivers Environmental Law Center or Environmental Law Center in St. Louis, that might be easier, we'll pop up on Google and you can just hit the contact page. But please reach out. Even if you're just curious to see, to learn more about this issue, or you're a parent, or maybe you're a student, honestly, we have high school kids that might be watching this, right? And you just are curious of what's going on. Please feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to talk at different hours of the day, because I know people, work 9 to 5 or have 2 jobs, or I will make myself accessible. So just please don't let that be a hindrance from you reaching out.
I had, I think, 2 more questions and then I'm going to let you go. I always like to ask this one. Why do you care so much? You from the hood? Where you from?
So I love this question. So growing up, my dad and my grandmother are from the Ville. My mom's from U City, and I was raised in St. Charles County. And I talk about this in my college, even to this day, my college admission essay talks about how I just kind of noticed the difference between when I would get dropped off at my grandmother's house, or the neighborhoods I would ride through to get to her, my late grandmother's neighborhood and my father's neighborhood. I just kind of always, at even a young age, was like, well, why is there more, railroads or construction, or what's going on, why the parks look different here, and not truly realizing what was going on. I was at the time 6-7 years old, and it wasn't until I got to college, when I saw this documentary called Cancer Alley, and it's about people that live in the South, and I saw children literally playing next to petrochemical, so oil companies and these huge rigs and all this industry, and all of them had really rare cancers and had asthma at high rates. And my teacher said, this is intentional. This community, this Black community, this poor Black community has been targeted by these large companies, by their elected officials, because they thought that they were just throwaway communities where, these big polluting industries could be placed here. And quite frankly, I got really pissed off. I got really angry. And that was, I think, week 2 of my college career. And I knew I wanted to go to law school. I knew I wanted to be an environmental justice attorney. That was my only focus. They said, Madeline, there's not that many jobs in the environmental law field. There's not that many jobs trying to be an environmental justice attorney full time. And I was like, well, this is what I want to do. This is not fair. This is really making a lot of people that look like me sick. And also on the flip side is people like me aren't getting to enjoy nature. They aren't getting to enjoy clean parks, fresh food at grocery stores, community gardens. So there's also a flip side of that, right? Like, not only are we experiencing a lot of pollution, but we're also not getting, access, right, to these great outdoor spaces that I truly have fallen in love with, right? And so that's what I wanted to do. And I got lucky enough that my funder, Faber, with Equal Justice Works, said, we will fund you to go back to St. Louis, work on what I think is the most crucial environmental justice issues is lead poisoning. And here I am talking to you. And so this is exactly what I want to be doing. This is what I'm passionate about. And, if no one else will listen, I'm happy that you're listening, Carmen, because it's a really important issue. And I'm really passionate about, your zip code not dictating your environment, not dictating your health issues related to the environmental hazards. Like, everyone should have access to green, healthy spaces and be proud of where they live. And so that's why I'm here. That's why I care. I know that's very long. I talk very fast, but
I wanted people to understand the why, because the why factor is imperative. The other thing that you said that stood out to me is that you're willing to teach people things. I'm college educated, but I don't know what I don't know. And I'm not going to pretend like I do. Um, I'm incubating, like I said, the community pod that just got funded. I am an entrepreneur, just launched a business. So the other question that I was going to ask you is, when the time is right, and when I get a few parents or community members, will you come back and teach us a little bit more about lead and environmental justice and how to advocate and how to organize around these issues? We are just starting this work, and it's a great time to reimagine how to center each other so that we can grow and thrive. I am going to share this video everywhere. I'm going to boost it, because it's important that we work together in collective power. If you want change, you have to pull up and do something different, and then be willing to teach people that do not know and will not know unless you tell them. So that was my other request, and you said yes.
I'd be happy to. I'd be happy to do presentations, phone calls, if we need to walk and talk, whatever people want, to just get this issue out and organize around it would be great. And so thank you so much, Carmen, I know you're a busy woman. So thank you so much for having me on and letting me share this message with folks.
You are so welcome. Hold me to my homework so I can start connecting all of those other dots. I will bring Madeline Middlebrooks back very soon to give you guys an update, but be on the lookout. She's about to be crisscrossing St. Louis Public Schools, helping to provide proactive solutions while teaching us what we don't know. Thank you, Ms. Middlebrooks.
Thank you, Carmen. Have a great day.